Camera and audio people, we ready to go? It's like, we already going. That's, okay. Works for me. In that case, everyone, welcome to 3 ways Google Tools can save teachers time. How many of you would say, look, I have no bigger stressor than time, that's why I'm here. Get with it, man. All right, cool. Now, I like that this is something that you understand there is a solution to. It's not as if we have to kind of do certain things over and over again and lose lots and lots of time with it. So we're doing fine on that front. I think that at least one of the 3 ideas will be something that saves you tons of time. I'm hoping that I will save each of you dozens of hours and collectively maybe thousands of hours. Well, swinging for the fence with this. But let's jump into it. A little bit about me real quick. All right, and I'll say that I'm a giver. I give away these slides, right? So at the end there'll be a link so that you can get all of the slides that I reference. So anything that's in it that you're like, well, I want to take notes on that. If it's in the slide, you can get the slides, so you don't need to take notes. Just saying, you don't need to take time doing that, right? What I do, I'm a former high school teacher of Japanese language, former principal of a K-12 and then an online high school. And now I run a little nonprofit called Next Vista for Learning. It's an online library of videos made by and for teachers and students everywhere. It's free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from. My own little attempt to save the world from ignorance, one creative video at a time, right? And we run a little contest, 90 seconds or less, creatively explain something one might encounter in school. Or service videos. Get to know a charity in your community and tell their story via a short video. And we'd love to get you guys involved with that, but I'm moving on. A little bit about you real quick. When you think about a session like this, where we're trying to really pin down the things that may be costing us time, just real quick, how many of you are classroom teachers? Raise your hand if you're a classroom teacher. Fantastic. How many of you are administrators? Okay. How many of you are a support team at the school in some way, shape, or form? All right, excellent. How many of you are in teacher preparation programs in some fashion? Anybody? Hey, all right, cool. Stay in touch with me on those things as well, because plenty I'd be happy to share. I like knowing kind of who an audience is. I think that's important. And also, so you know, we've got a chat going, right? So if you will have a tab open to todaysmeet.com/RH-FETC, then that way we're not simply relying on what I say as the value to this session, because if we open it up to the expertise and talents of all the people in the room, there'll be many more opportunities for you to find those things that will save you a little time. So please think in terms of sharing your ideas as we go as well, because you may have that thing that helps somebody on the other side of the room save dozens of hours over the coming year. todaysmeet.com/RH-FETC. Like any Today's Meet chat, it only lasts for so long. But if after the session you're like, I want to capture this, you can always go to your browser, print it out as a PDF so it's searchable, right? And you're not hating on paper. Okay? All right. So with that, let's jump into some time savers here. All right. The first is that I want to say one of the things that we as teachers do constantly is reinvent the wheel, right? Teachers, perhaps more than any other profession, are the reinventing the wheel type. I'm a teacher, I understand, I know, right? And when we think about that, this has probably more of an impact on our time than anything else, because that stress that we feel related to, am I ready for next week? Am I ready for tomorrow? Am I ready for the class that's about to start in 3 minutes, right? Those things are real in our experiences. And so if we can find ways to shave time in preparation so that we can really walk into these things with much more of a, I've got time, I'm just going to watch these kids walk into the room, see what's on their faces, see what might be worrying a particular child, right? Because when we're really hurried, we miss those clues. Kids walk into our classroom all the time with messages on their faces. Does that make sense? Right? And we need to be ready to be able to say, hey, are you all right today? Hey, I want you to know, I'm glad you're here. It's not hard for us to do that, but when we're stressed about time, we forget to. So that's the real importance of this stuff, to be able to be on our game when we need to be there for those kids. So I figure if I can save you tons of time from reinventing the wheel, that would be a major woohoo, right? Can I get a woohoo? I'm in the right room. All right, so I'm I'm about to show you a site. This site will save you dozens and dozens of hours. It's an amazing site. Most of you are going to be like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Please, get to it, man, right? What is this site? If you've never seen this before, get ready. This is great. Have you ever seen this site right here, right? This, right? Some of you are like, so disappointing. All right, but the thing is that while we all know this site, it's not as if everybody knows how to use this site to save themselves time. So I want to help you with that. Let's say, for example, that you are doing a presentation tomorrow with your students on haiku poetry. You don't know squat about haiku poetry, right? You're kind of like, haiku, I don't know, something, Japanese, I've had some sushi, that kind of stuff, right? But what it means to explain, the intricacies of haiku poetry, that's not where you are. So what do? You start, you pull out PowerPoint perhaps, so it's fine. And you start like pulling things, researching and Googling, all of this stuff. You can do that. You can spend hours and hours in doing that, totally fine. Or you can tap into the haiku poetry PowerPoints that have been put together by teachers around the world in the last few months and use those with your students because they're probably more insightful than the one you're going to make. I'm just saying. Okay? So how do you go about that? Here's how you start. Okay, now take a close look at the code happening on the screen, right? Haiku poetry, we all knew that part. And then the next part, file type :PPT. If you're looking for a presentation, one huge advantage of PowerPoint is that everybody knows it. It's been around for 20 years or 3,000 or whatever it's been, right? And so lots of people have made PowerPoints that are now out there. So you can go find them. And you might go looking and find that 4 out of 5 are terrible and the 5th one's really good. There you go, right? That's what we want. We want to find the ones that'll be like, okay, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So what do? We do this search, which means that every result in the Google search will be a PowerPoint. Not some PowerPoint buried somewhere on a page. It's a PowerPoint file. That's what you're getting, all right? And when you look at the results, you can see it on the left. You see the PPT kind of going up and down there. What do you look for first? The address. That address is a big deal. That's your clue as to which ones you should kind of try out and see what they might be like. This one says www.gifted.k12.la.us. What does the US mean? US. United States. What does the K-12 mean? School. What does LA mean? Yeah, okay, so some of you are like, that sounds like Los Angeles. Others are like, I know where you're from. That's Lower Arkansas, isn't it now? All right. It's Louisiana. Those of you who knew it. All good, right? So the SLP is actually St. Landry's Parish, if you knew that. Whoa, Style Point's huge. All right, but the gifted part's kind of interesting as well, right? So there are a number of clues in there that give you some sense of what's on the way. And so when you look at this and you say, okay, well, is that a good PowerPoint? Well, let's take a look at it. I downloaded that bad boy, so we can take a look at it. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to launch this thing. We're going to see what we think. So up pops PowerPoint, Microsoft. Here we go. So we've got haiku poetry. What do we know about it? Well, it is seasonal, and 575. One of those helpful hints and some examples. And now it's your turn. Get ready. Write a poem. There we go. All right, so, right? Did I spend a bunch of time putting together a PowerPoint, right, to teach haiku? No, some wonderful teacher in Louisiana did it for me. Bless her heart, that's wonderful. How do you know it's a her? I don't, but, right? Here's the thing, right? When I get set the next day to talk to my kids about haiku poetry, I say, kids, we're going to take a look at a little presentation here about haiku poetry. It was put together by a teacher in Louisiana. Let's give that person a hand. Yay! All right, moving on. That's citing your source, right? And you model that. I'm quite serious. You want to say where you got it. Let them know. I use things that other people have put out that are available for me to use appropriately, right? That's okay. Are you sure? Is it not copyrighted? Look, all right, when we talk about things like PowerPoints that teachers have placed online, all right, you are so squarely within fair use provisions of copyright laws to be able to use it in your classroom. If you put your name as the one who did it and stick it online, that's not cool at all, right? But on the other hand, if you're just using it in your classroom and you're modeling the idea of there are people out there making good things, all right, let's tap into it. Nothing wrong with that. Can I get an amen on that? Amen. All right then. All right, so some more thoughts about this real quick. As you go searching through PowerPoints or any file that you don't have to do PPT, there are other things as well, right? That might be out there. You're going to find things that are good. You're going to find things that are bad. You're going to find things that are kind of tepid, all right? Now here's the thing. Among these 3 categories of results of the stuff you find, 2 of the categories are useful. 2. The good ones are obviously useful, right? So are the bad ones. Why? Why would the bad ones be useful? Imagine this, right? So I have presented haiku poetry to you guys. Haiku poetry, let's try some. It's seasonal. Get a season in there. Right? Cherry blossoms, good job. Cicadas, well done. That kind of stuff, right? But later on, maybe 5 days into the unit that includes haiku poetry, you might say, all right, guys, now get in your groups, get ready. I'm going to put a presentation on the screen. It's about haiku poetry, and I will tell you right now, it sucks. Maybe you won't use that word, but that's okay, right? Right? It's really, really bad. And you will have to tell me why, right? Put bad stuff in front of the students and ask them to say, what is it about this presentation that's not so hot? What is it about this video that could be improved? Had you been making this, how would you have done it differently? What people might be looking at this and be confused because of the way it's constructed? Get them to answer those kinds of questions. That can get them in a wonderful space for not repeating the same mistakes when they make their presentations, videos, holographic images, interpretive dance things for you, all right? So stuff like that. So far, so good? Yet more about this one point. If we can do it, so can the kids, right? So you go, well, wait a minute, that seems kind of cool, but occasionally I tell my kids, I'd like you to make a PowerPoint about, right? Well, right? They can go and do exactly the same things, change the name quite dishonorably, right? And say, this is mine. Now, as I hope you know, that's kind of easy to catch, right? You can imagine the student walking in your room. Here's my PowerPoint about the Great Wall of China. You're like, great, let's take a look at it. You did this. Yes, I did. Well, I just hadn't heard you use the word oleaginous before. I had to look it up. Did you? All right, now, so it's not hard to catch, right? You can do things like find unusual terms and phrases in a document. This goes for papers as well, right? And find those phrases, put them in quotes when you search, so it searches for them as a string, right? And then add file type : whatever file type you've got, and see what appears. Chances are good it'll be like at the top of the list, because the plagiarist, by definition, is lazy, right? They're not going 2 pages deep to find the result, right? That one looks good, boom, change the name, done, right? You might say, look, I gave up doing PowerPoints years ago. Try to get to something useful, man. Boom, right there, all right? So, if you're like a middle school or a high school teacher, right, and if someone's come along like 3 weeks before school starts, 3 weeks, 3 days before school starts, says, there's this new class we want you to teach. You're like, oh, can I wake up from this dream? It's real, oh, right, that kind of thing, right? One of the great things to do is to put the name of the course in Google, add the word syllabus, and then file type : PDF. And you will find syllabi that are out there about this course that you suddenly are about to teach. This is useful even if you've been teaching the course for years. Hey, it's interesting that these people put together this course in this way. I wouldn't have thought to do that. What an interesting set of activities they've added. This is a good activity, right, for getting good stuff out of what you're doing. All right. So with that is my first of 3 ways Google Tools can help you out, all right? So the whole thing around save yourself time, don't reinvent the wheel, go use stuff that other teachers have put out there to save you time. And ideally, you become one of those teachers who also puts things out there to save other teachers time. That's the professional environment that is evolving for us given the way technology works. And it's a heck of a lot better than the isolation that has been the cancer of the educational system for decades. Right? Just saying. Okay, so here we go. Second time saver. Second time saver comes down to how we check for understanding. Because here is another place where we lose a phenomenal amount of time. And the problem is that we do certain things and we have these hopes for them and it just doesn't make sense. We ask boneheaded questions in class. I do? Yes, you do. Do you, Rushton? I certainly did. Are you in class? Is that why you no longer? I'm not in class. Or if I were there, I'm sure I'd ask the same boneheaded questions. Some of you like, get on with it. Okay, fine. All right. So the boneheaded question is this. Who understands? That's a boneheaded question. There's an even worse one. Who doesn't understand? Terrible question. And we all ask it. And we think, oh, no, but see, well, we need to know, right? We need to know who doesn't understand, or because that way we can help that person out. Only if they tell you if they don't understand, right? Because when you say, who doesn't understand, what the kids hear is, who would like to raise your hand and announce to the room that you're an idiot? Who? No one. I must have done a great job explaining it. We'll move on, right? Terrible, 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 terrible question, right? They hear the question and they're like, oh, not again, not again, right? I didn't get it and I needed you to help me, but, right, that kind of thing. So this results in a certain kind of inefficiency that comes from like the traditional approach to presenting content. I am about to present to you, cameraman, be ready. I'm about to present to you an interpretive dance that explains the traditional approach to presenting content. Are we ready? Sorry, I thought I'd lost you for a minute. All right, here we go. Here we go. Present new stuff to you. You all look at me with blank stares. Good. All right, so I move on. I was like, okay, so here's more of this good stuff. Okay, do you have questions about this good stuff? All right, so we're going to try this. We're going to do some activities. All right, going to work with it. Okay, we're going to try a little more. We got a test coming up, guys. Okay, so here we go. We're going to practice a little bit for the test. We're practicing the test. You're doing good? All right, here we go. I'm going to give you the test. You take the test. You hand it back to me. I come back over here. I grade the test, and I look at it. Oh, half of you didn't get it. That's real. It's very, very real. We have tests, and you know, honestly, if we have presented the information and we give them a test and we grade the test and half of them didn't get it, whose issue is that? It's ours. We need to own that. We need to be, okay, right? We need to make sure that that material is presented in such a way that, say, more than half of them can get it. Well, how do we go about this? How do we go about it? I would say there is a point at which we can get much better info out of our students. And it happens like right over here in the interpretive setting. I present a bunch of information to you. I get here. I stop. I need to know who is looking at me thinking, I have no idea what you're saying. They may have the facial expression that helps us out on this. They may not. They certainly aren't going to say anything in front of the class. So we need some kind of anonymous survey tool, right? Here's where we get to Google Tools. Google Forms. If you have never learned Google Forms, you should learn it. You're like, well, tell me that now. It's the end of the conference, man. You know, but here's another wildly useful tidbit I'm tossing in. Get ready. This is really useful if you're like, oh, I'm coming back to the caffeine. It's kicking in. Good. Here we go. All right. Wildly useful. If you want to learn Google Forms or any piece of technology at all for free at a time of your choosing, where do you go? YouTube. If you had it wrong, don't worry. You've got it right now, right? So you go to YouTube, and you go to YouTube, and you put in like the thing you want, and you add the magic word, tutorial, right? Google Forms tutorial, or an introduction to Google Forms, or how to make a Google Form. You know, I mean, you just word the search right in YouTube, and you'll find people who will explain it to you. I don't know how many of you guys have learned something via YouTube in the past 6 months, right? Everybody. It's an are you paying attention question, right? Last March, I was in Palm Springs for a conference. Palm Springs, not a bad place for a conference, really. Right? So I'm in Palm Springs for a conference, and I rent a car. I get out to the car. I figure out that my key has no little thing coming off of it. There's no little metal piece coming off the key. This should have clued me in that something was going to be complex, right? So I get in the car, and I put that down. I look across the dash, and there's a button that says push to start. That seems rather comprehensive to me, really, right? So I push it. Lights come on, nothing else. I'm like, Right? So I push it again, but hold, right? It's like tap and hold, right? So I push and hold. The lights go off. I'm like, so I look out. There's a woman moving some of the cars around. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, maybe she can help me out. So I get out. So excuse me, pardon me, is it the car? Well, how do you make it go, right? and so she walks over and she gets in and sits in and she looks over. She sees the button, presses it, engine comes right on. I'm like, that's what I tried. She's looking at me like, you're an idiot, right? And so, okay. So like I drove off to where I needed to go, went into my meeting, and I had a meeting, blah, 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 came back out so I could drive to the hotel, got into the car, pushed the button, nothing. Other than the lights. So I pull out my phone, go to the YouTube app, how to start a Mazda CX-5. 7 seconds into the video, it shows somebody putting their foot on the brake. So I put my foot on the brake and I press the button and here comes the engine. I'm like, couldn't that lady have told me that, right? So anyway. Now, so with all of that in place, how do the Google tools help us with this regard? You go to Google Drive, right? New Google Form, all right? So, you know, Google Form is that place, right? And with Google Form, you create something like this, a confidence check. Now, I've only got 3 questions on this, and only one of them is required. The top one is required. on a 1 to 10, how are you with the material I just presented to you? Where 10 is, dude, I could teach this, and 1 is, I have no clue what you're talking about, right? And it's an honest. They can pull out their phones. If they got devices, they can do that. If half of them have devices, and a person can do it, finish, and then hand the device to the next person, and they can do it, all good. Totally fine, right? Because that way I can just know. I can look, the results come into a spreadsheet immediately. I take a look, and it's like, oh, all right, the average is 9. I nailed it. Move on. Or the average is 2. I blew it. Start over. And don't present it the same way I did last time, right? So that's the pieces, right? So we got a little bit there. The 1 to 10, it's called a scale question, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, that kind of thing, right? And then I have name there, but it's optional. So if you're sitting in my class and you're thinking, I need help. You don't want to say anything in front of the others because hardly anyone ever does. But you can, if you want, you can put your name. And I'll check in with you at a time. I won't like immediately announce them. Mark, I see you need help. Mark's like, right? I won't do that, but I'll catch up with you later and we'll work on it. I'm happy to do that. It's fine. Comments are always good to have. Is this the same as this other thing? You're like, no, not at all, but I'm glad you asked. And that might actually form what you do at the beginning of class the next day. That's a great question. Let's work with that idea because we get blinders, right? We've been teaching stuff. We've been teaching it. This is how we teach it. When they come at it, they're like, tell me about this thing. We're like, well, it works like this. We need to get them into our space, right? Sort of, kind of, maybe not, right? How we talk about this stuff together is what makes the difference. All right. So in a Google form, you can get to summary of responses and quickly be able to see where people are with these, right? And you could use this particular one over and over again. All good. Okay. So with that, how many of you like, that makes a ton of sense? I love being able to survey people quickly. I'm willing to do the Google form tutorial and give this a try at some point. How many of you in there? Okay, cool. All right. How many of you already knew it? How many? That was a lot of people, right? I'll move to the next thing. All right. All good. Cool. All right. This next one's gonna. A lot of you guys are gonna be like, whoa, on this. So this one's really a whoa kind of category. Get on with it. Okay. All right. This one kind of starts with this question. How many of you have students who underperform? All right. Underperform. That's an are you paying attention question. I know. We've got a lot of kids whose bar just seems a little low, right? Now, the question, let's work with that idea for a minute. Is it simply the case you will always have the poor among you? No, that's not what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with is this larger question of why do kids do poorly? Why? Now, especially if we're focusing on like 5th grade and above. I mean, I think this applies right down the line. But especially with 5th grade and above, what have we asked them to do? Now, the lower the grade you get, the smarter the instruction tends to be, right? Because kids are actively involved and the kids are, very honest about what they're experiencing at the moment, right? And that's all good. And as we get farther up, the kids, kind of get in that, no, I'm not going to say anything about anything, that kind of thing. But what we want is to really pin down why they're doing bad. You're like, oh my goodness, if you can get this out in this particular session, I'm going to give it a shot, right? Because it comes down to things like this. I'd say they're notes. I'd say the big whopping suspect for why they do badly is their notes. This is just notes I found on Flickr, right? I think this one's funny. Funny? Yeah, it's funny. Look, we're all going to die. You think that's funny? Well, So no, what I mean by this, right, is that when we think about notes, let's think about what happens with notes. Let's say that I'm your student and you are presenting to me, and you start to explain something, and I think, what my teacher just said sounds important. I'm going to try to write that word down. I don't know how to spell it, but I'm going to try. So now I'm thinking about spelling it. Maybe I spelled it right, maybe not. I look up, you're a sentence and a half past where you were. So now I'm trying to connect what you're talking about now with what I didn't quite understand before, which is not, let's say, a high percentage activity for success, right? So then you say something that I know is important because you actually went to the trouble of writing it on the board. So I'm not copying that down on my notes as well. So I'm copying that down. I'm not a fast writer, right? A lot of kids are not fast writers, right, or typers. They're just not. So I'm trying to get it down. I finally get through copying that down. I look up, you're 4 sentences past where you were a minute ago in terms of your explanation as to the importance of this stuff. So now I'm trying to decide, okay, well, what did I miss? What kind of things were you just saying? Do you see the problem, right? If I'm only catching 1 out of every 3 or 4 sentences you say, my notes are going to be atrocious. They're going to be really, really bad. And what do I use to study for the test? My atrocious notes. It's actually not that mysterious as to why a lot of kids, after you start having them take notes, as to why. Who teaches them? Who teaches them to take notes? Ask the college professors. They should have learned that in high school. Ask the high school teachers. I believe that was a middle school thing. Ask the middle school teachers. 5th grade. No one. Unless they're lucky enough to be in an AVID program somewhere, they don't learn notes. So what do we do about it, right? Because what I just described is a big, whopping issue for the classroom, right? And we don't want to be it's terrible. What do we do now? Right? No. Right? Let's see if we can come at it with a suggestion. Let's get technology to do something for us. I'm going to go back to Google Drive for this as well. And what we would do is create a document. Now, one of the things that I hope you know about a Google Doc is that you can share it, right? Imagine this. Imagine you are my class. I have a Unit 8 coming up. What's Unit 8? I don't know. Photosynthesis and basket weaving and traditional China. Got it. Okay. All right, so here comes Unit 8. I create a Unit 8 notes, and I share it with all of you. We all have this document. You're about to tell us that you're going to take the notes for us. No, that doesn't help them. All right, that's giving them the fish instead of teaching them the fish. Right? So what are we going to do? I've shared the document with everybody. Here we are. We're starting class on day 1 of Unit 8. All right. Jonathan, you're primary note taker. All right. Maria, you're secondary. Everybody else, your job is to pay attention. Listen. Right. Pay attention. Listen close. You don't have to stop and try to write things down. Another person is doing that. You could even have on your screen, if you're lucky enough to have kids with screens or that kind of thing, they could actually watch the notes getting taken. And Jonathan isn't hurrying, to get back and to do things because Maria's cleaning up after him, right? So there's a team effort going on. So everybody's kind of getting to see this. And then I add the piece that is the piece. 10 minutes before the end of class, I say, all right, class, let's go to the notes, put it up on the screen. I say, all right, what from this class that was really important didn't find its way into the notes? Let's add whatever we need. We all realize that we're constantly working to make the notes better, right? So it's not like, oh, gotcha, you didn't do it. That's not it at all, right? We're just working together to make the notes right. Well, you mentioned this over this time. I don't see that in the notes. Right. Okay. Now, what was important about that, right? Now, think about that discussion. Think about that 10 minutes. You're hammering home the most important pieces of the entire class. You're getting them to go through a process of saying, what is it that we need to know as we walk out of here? And they've had a chance to see other people take notes and to have those notes critiqued, in effect, in a loving atmosphere. Next day, it's going to be somebody else who's the primary note taker and somebody else is the secondary. Oh, but this kid over here, he's not very good at notes, right? Okay, maybe he or she is never more than the secondary note taker. Might even pull the kid aside someday. What do you think about taking notes? You want to be primary sometimes? I do. That's all the reason you need. Just know on that day, finish your class 15 minutes early instead of 10 so that you can get back and have plenty of time to work with it. Maybe at the end of class every day, you look at and say, okay, let's give a hand to our primary and secondary note takers. Yay! That's actually good, kind of good stuff. I'm not saying applaud people for breathing, or like walking right and left and doing that again. What I'm saying is just, let's just thank each other for being part of this. When it comes time to study for the test, they've all got the same document to study from that's got vetted notes that we've all talked through. How many of you like, okay, that's an interesting idea. Don't know where I can do it, but it's an interesting idea. Okay, cool. So with that, we're looking at the third of 3 ideas, right? The first one has to do with not reinventing the wheel. The second has to do with using tools that are readily available, freely available, to see where people are with things as we go through it, so that you can catch it when people start going, ooh. The third one is about getting at the root of something pervasively challenging in education, which is what the students study from and how they actually get good at creating those things on their own. So those are the 3 different pieces of this as we go. Now, I've actually got in the slides for this, these steps, right? So you share a doc with everybody, you identify the primary and secondary, others, their job is to pay attention, you review during the last part of class, right? So with that, I have given you 3 ways that Google Tools may well save you time. That's my hope. Now, I invite you in the chat to add time savers of your own. Time savers of your own. What things do you do that end up saving you some time? Okay? Now you're like, well, let's do the thing that we should do to jog people's memory. I want you to take just a minute. We're going to do this for like 60 seconds. Turn to the person next to you. Which side? I don't know. You decide, right? And talk. What are some things that save you time? Give it a shot. Go. Ten seconds. 10 seconds. So, I'm hoping that whatever you just talked about can now make its way into the chat if it hasn't already. Add those things to the chat so that everybody else in this room, right, can see this stuff. And it just occurred to me, by the way, that if you are watching the looking straight at the camera, if you are watching the recording of this session, I will add to the slides a link so that you can get the chat, so you can get everything that people have shared here. Back to our normally scheduled session. All right. Some ideas. Could you toss out a few? Let's get a few. Come on. Yes. What you got?
I use Google Forms just to get information about students at the start of the semester.
Nice.
And then I get all their email addresses and their phone numbers and whatnot. But I tend to use email the most just to communicate with them over the things I forgot to say, the deadlines, things exciting they're coming up. Don't forget to do this. They seem to remember that and pay attention later if I still do class.
Got it. So let me repeat that for the group, right? One of the things that Google Forms is really good for, one of the many things, is that you can capture a bunch of student information on the front end of, say, the school year or the semester. A lot of kids like email or some other tool for this. You could use like Remind, as a way of doing it via text. There's a lot of ways to do it. It gives you the ability to shoot notes and reminders out to them. So if you've got all their emails, and you can just send out a note that says, hey, everybody remember that there's this and this. Hey, here's a link to this resource. Don't forget this and this. That can be quite useful. Right? I used it and asked things like this. When I did this at the beginning of the school year when I last taught, I would say, so I'd also like you to put your parents' name or names, right, and a way I can contact them so that if you come in someday and you tell me this, Mr. Hurley, I'm having a really bad experience right now with my fill-in-the-blank class, right? Could you call home and tell them something good about me? I'll be able to do it. They're in. They're in. And I've had kids do it. And Mr. Hurley, I need a little help. Okay, all right, I can do it. Which is also a good way for me able to add to their plates this. Make sure you're giving me something good to talk about, right? Push yourself in some way. Know what it is. We can talk through that. So that's good. Other things that kind of stand out for you, all right? Other good time savers, yes. Doctopus is a way of getting folders arranged and shared documents and everything. Right. So now those of you who are like, Doctopus, that's a funny word. All right, so it's an add-on that you can use to simplify a process of sharing documents. Now, Google Classroom is a good tool for this. Google Classroom is still kind of beta-ish. It's been around for about 6 months and it's still beta-ish, but it does that really well, right? A little bit of front-end work of establishing, well, here's my class. That means that when you create a document and you create an assignment, you can quickly make sure that all of the students have, read-only copies of this, view-only copies. That, if you haven't looked at Google Classroom, it's good for that. It's not going to replace other LMSs at the moment, but who knows? Like any Google tool, if it doesn't do what you want right now, wait a week and check again, right? All the time. I was in something, like a week ago, and somebody's like, well, how do I copy one slide from one Google presentation to another Google presentation? I said, well, you have to go through import slides. It's like, oh no, I just copied and pasted. I'm like, what? You didn't used to be able to do that. And I'm like, hearing my own voice. Wait a week and try again. Right? Oh, okay. So a lot of different things out there. And if you kind of like that Google Classroom, I heard about it, but I really don't know enough to give it a try. Where do you go? YouTube, Google Classroom, right? Intro to Google Classroom, Google Classroom tutorial, stuff like that. All right. One more question, if one is out there. Yeah, here in the back.
I've used today's meet to have students back channel key concepts, ideas discussed during the lesson.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize they were all taking collective notes.
Ah, all right. So the good comment that just came is, with today's meet as a tool for having a chat, that's also another way of taking collective notes, right? Now, here's something to know. This is not a Google tool, but that's okay. Not everything has to be, right? So take a look at this. When we go to todaysmeet.com, this is what you get. Now, one of the beautiful things about today's meet, this is bonus, like time saver, by the way. You could be 60 seconds from the beginning of class, and you could create a way to start the class and have 30 seconds left over to just lounge. All right? All you have to do is to pick a name that is not currently in use. So if I pick RH-FETC, it's currently in use. It's the one I'm using. But if I added a 1, right? So you see how there's a little check on the right? That's how you know. Red X, green check. All is good. So then you say, how long is it going to be open? It's going to be open for 1 hour, 1 month, whatever. Now, here is the added bonus piece of info for today's meet. If you sign in, if you create a teacher tool, there's a today's meet teachers tools, right? And what that does is it adds a few things that you definitely want. And this is free. It's a little hard to get through this stuff with it continuing to be free, but they will. There is an argument for actually paying them $5 a month, but get to know the system for free before you do that, right? So here's the things it offers you. First of all, you could have a chat open for a year. You could have a chat that just goes all year. Now that would be a pretty big chat, right? But you could. The thing that I really, really like about it is that when you create a chat in today's meet using the teacher tools, if you don't like what somebody has said in it, you can delete them. You can hover over that comment and a little delete will appear and you just click to delete, that one goes away. That you get in the teacher tools but not in the regular one, right? So 3 levels of today's meet. Totally free, don't need an account. You can create something in seconds. Free teacher tools, which requires you to create an account but still very easy to use and gives you this added benefit. And then there's like a $5 a month thing that they do. Take a look at it, see if it works well for you, because that gives you yet more kind of possibilities with it. I don't know what those are, kind of in detail at the moment, but you can take a look. Great comment. Thank you, sir. All right. So with that, we are at 10:37 a.m. on the West Coast. All right? Yes, I woke up very early today, as I see it. But I hope there have been some things in this that have been useful to you, right? And as you begin to finish, there's a couple of things I want you to do, right? First of all, take a look at that resources page, nextvista.org/resources. You're like, if you've got a today's meet, right? And here's another quick today's meet thought for you. And you're logged in. I'm way too OCD to leave that capitalized, all right? Oi! There we go. I say join, and I say freebies, right? And that is http://nextvista.org/resources. Now, say, the link is now available to you in the chat, so you don't have to have people copying down links. That's another really nice use of today's meet. Similarly, newsletter. All right, http://nextvista.org/newsletter. If you are not currently on my newsletter, I invite you to sign up because I put out all kinds of little things that might be useful to you. Here's how to stay in touch with me. There's my email. There's my Twitter handle right there. The video library, which I hope some of you will be saying, you know, I could make some videos with my students that would be really, really helpful for others, especially my students who come next year. I'd love to have some place to put these that's not, say, YouTube. Talk to me. All right, so happy to help you out. The resources, the newsletter, and then finally the slides. So the slides from this presentation, everything you just saw, right there. And somebody in your email remind me, hey, remember you were going to get that chat available for those people who are watching this as a recording. Oh, yeah. All right. Meta. Really? We're talking now, but it's future. Never mind. All right, so anyway, with that, please do that. Please also do the FETC evaluation. Thank you so much for sticking around to Friday afternoon. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Take care. Save lots of time.